The sun was sinking behind the red mountains when the whispers began again. Travelers at the trading post spoke in hushed tones, warning newcomers never to wander near the Forbidden Valley. Even the bravest merchants lowered their eyes when the name was spoken. It was a place of fear, a cursed land where men vanished without a trace. They said the valley was ruled by a tribe of alien females, tall, strong, and ravenous. They hunted not for food, not for survival, but for something darker. No one returned once they entered the tribe's territory. Soldiers had tried, mercenaries had tried, even entire hunting parties had tried. All were lost. The few survivors who stumbled back half-mad spoke of glowing eyes in the dark, of shrieks that froze the blood, and of warriors who moved faster than the wind. The locals called them the ravenous ones. To outsiders, they were a story told to scare children. But here, near the valley, no one laughed at the tale. Fear was real. Fear was alive. And yet on this very evening, one man walked straight toward the valley. He was human. His name was whispered by no one, for no one knew it here. He had arrived at the trading post only 2 nights before, carrying little more than a pack and a calm smile. The merchants had warned him. The innkeeper had pleaded with him, but he had only listened politely, then asked for directions to the valley. Now, as the last light of the sun painted the mountains blood red, the human stood at the edge of the Forbidden Valley. The air here was different, thicker, heavier, almost alive. Strange plants twisted like claws out of the ground. Shadows stretched long, and the wind carried an eerie whisper that sounded too much like laughter. Most men would have turned back at the first step. Most would have prayed for their lives, but the human did not turn back. He did not pray. He walked forward. Birds shrieked and scattered as he entered. The valley floor crunched beneath his boots, a mix of broken bones and dried leaves. Somewhere in the distance a howl echoed. It was not the howl of an animal, but something sharper, something cruel. The sound would have sent chills into the hearts of hardened warriors. But the human kept moving, his expression calm, his eyes steady. Unknown to him, or perhaps exactly as he expected, he was being watched. High above in the rocks, hidden between the twisted trees, alien eyes followed him. They were golden and bright, reflecting the faint moonlight. The hunters of the ravenous tribe had seen many intruders before. Usually they struck quickly with no mercy. But this time they did not leap. They waited. There was something different about this prey. He walked too calmly, too confidently. Where was his fear? Where was his trembling? The human stopped at a stream that cut through the valley. The water shimmered faintly, though it carried the stench of rot. He knelt and touched it with his hand as though testing the land itself. The shadows behind him stirred. The hunters whispered among themselves, their sharp teeth glinting. They wanted to taste him, to hear him scream, to drag him before their leader. But their curiosity was stronger than their hunger. For the first time in many years, they did not attack. The human rose again and looked directly toward the rocks, where he knew somehow that eyes were watching. His gaze was steady. He did not shout, he did not challenge. He simply looked. And for a brief moment the hunters froze. No prey had ever looked back at them like that. No prey had ever met their gaze without terror. The leader of the hunting party hissed from the shadows. Her voice was low, sharp, and filled with promise. "He walks willingly," she whispered in her alien tongue. "Does he not know what we are?" Another warrior laughed softly, a cruel sound like steel on bone. "Then let him learn." But still they did not strike. The human moved again, deeper into the valley. The strange plants seemed to bend toward him. The shadows seemed to follow. He moved as though he belonged here, as though the cursed land was nothing more than a path he had chosen. Every step echoed a silent defiance. Every breath was calm in the face of certain death. Behind him, the hunters followed. They would take him soon, drag him to their camp, to their leader, to the heart of the tribe where no man had ever returned. And yet something gnawed at their thoughts. Why was he here? Why was he not afraid? The night fell quickly in the Forbidden Valley. The moon rose pale and cold, casting silver light across the rocks. Strange cries echoed in the distance, and the shadows grew darker. The human stopped again, standing in the center of the valley as though waiting for them. The hunters crouched low, claws ready, fangs bared. The order to attack trembled on the leader's lips. But still she hesitated. Her golden eyes narrowed as she watched the human's steady form. This was no ordinary prey. For the first time in the tribe's long history, the hunters felt something strange, a flicker of doubt. And in that moment, the legend began. The night deepened over the Forbidden Valley and the silence grew heavy. The human walked calmly, his steps measured, his breathing steady. He was no soldier with armor, no hunter with traps. He carried only a small pack and a strange calmness that unsettled even the shadows. But the shadows were no longer empty. From the twisted trees above, the hunters finally moved. Branches bent under their weight as alien forms leapt soundlessly, circling him with inhuman grace. Their skins shimmered faintly, dark and smooth under the moonlight. Their bodies were tall, strong, and deadly, sculpted by years of predatory rule. Golden eyes glowed from every side. The humans stopped. Dozens of them crouched around him now, forming a ring of death. Their claws gleamed, their fangs flashed. Some hissed, others licked their lips as if already tasting his blood. No man had ever stood so deep in their land and lived long enough to speak, and yet he did not run. The leader of the hunters stepped forward. She was taller than the rest, her hair braided with bone charms, her voice sharp as a blade. Her lips curled into a cruel smile. "You walk where no male dares," she hissed in the common tongue, her accent rough and chilling. "Do you not know who we are?" The human's eyes met hers. His face was calm, his voice even. "I know exactly who you are," the hunters murmured in surprise. Few outsiders even lived long enough to speak to their leader. Most screamed. Most begged. But this one, his voice carried no fear. The leader narrowed her eyes. "Then why do you stand here unarmed in our land? Do you wish to die?" For a moment, silence pressed down on the valley. The wind carried only the sound of distant cries, strange beasts that roamed the night. The human finally answered, "I do not wish to die, but I do not fear you." Gasps broke among the hunters. One of them growled and stepped forward, baring her fangs. But the leader raised a hand, stopping her. Her golden eyes burned into the human's steady gaze. "Not fear?" she whispered. "Every creature fears us. Even the strongest warriors tremble when we strike. What makes you different, human?" Instead of answering, he did something unexpected. Slowly, calmly, he spread his arms wide, turning slightly so that every hunter could see him clearly. He was making himself open, vulnerable, daring them to act. The hunters hissed with hunger, claws twitching. One wrong move and they would tear him apart, but he stood as if carved from stone. The leader's lips parted in a cruel grin. "You are either the bravest fool I have ever seen, or something else entirely." She stepped closer, circling him like a predator testing its prey. Her claws traced the air near his chest, not touching, but close enough that he could feel the danger. Still, he did not flinch. One hunter, younger and impatient, could not resist. With a snarl, she lunged forward. Her claw sliced the air toward the human's throat, and stopped. The human had not moved. He had not fought back. He had only stared at her with a calm, steady gaze. And in that gaze, something unexpected burned. Not arrogance, not madness, but strength. A strength that did not need claws or fangs. The younger hunter froze, caught off guard by the weight of that stare. She hissed and stepped back, ashamed. The circle of hunters muttered among themselves. Something about this man was wrong. Something about him was dangerous in a way they could not understand. The leader tilted her head, intrigued. Her grin widened, but there was no longer only cruelty in her eyes. There was curiosity. "Very well," she said at last. "You will not die here, not yet. You will come with us." The hunters shifted in surprise. Some protested in their alien tongue, but the leader silenced them with a glare. No one disobeyed her command. 2 hunters moved forward, binding the human's wrists with ropes of woven vine. They expected him to struggle. They expected him to resist. He did neither. He simply let them tie him, his calmness more unsettling than any fight. As they dragged him deeper into the valley, toward the hidden camp of the ravenous tribe, the hunters whispered in low voices, "Why is he so calm? Does he not know he is already dead? Or does he know something we do not?" The leader walked at the front, her golden eyes glancing back at him often. Something about this human gnawed at her. Fearless prey was not prey at all, and if he was not prey, what was he? The moon rose higher, casting its silver light on the valley floor. The human's figure, bound but unbroken, walked among the hunters like a flame carried into darkness. And for the first time in their long reign of terror, the ravenous tribe felt something they had never felt before. doubt. The night was deep when the hunters dragged the human into the hidden camp of the ravenous tribe. Torches burned with green-blue fire, casting eerie shadows across the valley walls. The camp was a fortress of bone and stone, decorated with trophies of long-forgotten battles, skulls of beasts, broken weapons of soldiers, and torn banners from empires that had dared to challenge them. At the center, a tall fire roared, its sparks drifting into the alien night sky. Around it sat the tribe, dozens of alien females, each one tall, fierce, and scarred by years of dominance. They looked up as the human entered, their golden eyes gleaming like predators spotting fresh prey. But instead of screams or panic, they saw something they had never seen before: calmness. The human walked steadily, even as his wrists were bound. His gaze moved slowly across the faces of the tribe, as if memorizing each of them. He did not bow his head. He did not tremble. The whispers began. Why does he not fear? Does he not know who we are? No prey has ever walked like this. The leader of the tribe rose from her place near the fire. Taller than all the rest, she carried herself with the authority of a queen. Her hair was bound with silver beads, her armor carved from the bones of great beasts. She studied the human for a long moment before speaking. "You stand in the heart of our land," she said, her voice carrying through the night. "No male has ever reached this fire and lived. Tell me, human, why do you not beg for your life?" The hunters who had captured him tightened their grip on his arms, waiting for the trembling, the stuttering, the desperate pleas, but none came. Instead, the human lifted his head, his voice steady. "Because I have nothing to beg for." A ripple went through the tribe. Some laughed sharp and mocking. Others hissed, angry that their prey dared to speak so boldly. But many fell silent, their curiosity burning brighter. The leader's golden eyes narrowed. "Nothing to beg for?" she repeated. "Every man begs. Even the strongest fall to their knees when they see us. Do you think yourself different?" The human's gaze did not waver. "I do not think. I know." The camp erupted in noise, shouts, growls, harsh laughter. Some called for his immediate death. Others demanded he be torn apart as an example. Yet through it all, the human stood calm like a rock in a raging storm. The leader silenced them with a single gesture. Her eyes lingered on him with something dangerous, curiosity, sharper than hunger. "You speak like no prey we have taken," she said. "Perhaps you are mad. Perhaps you are clever. Either way, I will know." She stepped closer, circling him slowly. Her sharp claws traced the air near his throat, but again he did not flinch. "Tell me, human," she whispered. "Do you not fear death?" The firelight reflected in his eyes as he answered softly. "Death comes for everyone, but fear? That is a choice." Silence fell across the camp. Even the torches seemed to burn lower, their light trembling. The tribe had heard many things from prisoners before. Screams, curses, desperate prayers, but never words like these. The leader studied him for a long time, her face unreadable. Finally, she stepped back and raised her voice. "He will not die tonight." The tribe erupted again, shocked, angry, confused. But none dared challenge her command. The human was dragged to a cage of woven bone and thrown inside. The hunter slammed it shut, certain that at last his mask of calmness would crack. Alone, surrounded by the deadliest tribe in the galaxy, surely fear would come. But it did not. He sat in the cage, quiet, steady, as though the fire outside warmed him instead of threatened him. His eyes moved over the tribe, watching them with the same calm curiosity they had shown him. And slowly, almost unwillingly, they stared back. The younger hunters whispered among themselves. "Why is he not afraid? Is he a fool or is he something else? Look at his eyes. They do not shake." One by one they drifted closer to the cage, pretending to pass by, pretending to throw mocking words. But in truth they were studying him. His stillness unnerved them. His calmness challenged everything they believed. For generations, fear had been their weapon. Fear made them powerful. But here was a man who did not break, who did not bend. And that made them restless. By midnight, even the leader found herself near the cage. She looked at him for a long time, her golden eyes meeting his steady gaze through the bars. "You are not like the others," she said quietly. The human simply answered, "No, I am not." The leader's lips curled, not into a cruel smile, but into something else, something dangerous. And as the fire burned and the night stretched on, the ravenous tribe felt something strange for the first time in their long rule of terror. Not hunger, not anger, but curiosity. The fire in the alien camp burned low, its green-blue flames crackling softly. The night was almost silent except for the whispers of the tribe. Dozens of golden eyes still turned toward the cage where the human sat. He had been their prisoner for hours now, yet still he had not begged, not cursed, not even looked afraid. It unsettled them. The ravenous tribe had broken soldiers before. They had made generals scream. They had watched kings fall to their knees promising anything for mercy. But this man was different. He sat with his back straight, his gaze steady, as though the cage itself was nothing more than a chair beside the fire. Finally, the tribe's leader stood. Her tall figure cast a long shadow across the camp. The beads in her braided hair clicked softly as she walked toward the cage. The other hunters fell silent, waiting for her to speak. She stopped before him, her golden eyes glowing in the dim light. "Human," she said slowly, "you sit among predators. You are prey, yet you do not fear. Why?" The human looked up at her. His voice was calm, almost quiet, but it carried across the camp. "Because I have lived with monsters before, and none were greater than the ones inside men's hearts." The tribe stirred uneasily. His words carried no tremor, no weakness. They were not the words of prey. The leader tilted her head, intrigued. "You speak as if you know more than you show. What is your secret?" The human's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. "My secret is simple. Fear does not rule me. I have seen worse than death, and I survived." Murmurs rippled through the hunters. One younger female stepped forward, her voice mocking. "What could be worse than us?" The human's eyes shifted toward her. For a moment, the fire reflected in his gaze like steel. "Hopelessness," he said. "To live without hope is worse than any claw, any fang. I do not fear you because you cannot take that from me." The tribe fell silent. No prisoner had ever spoken to them like this. His words did not come from arrogance. They came from truth. The leader crouched low, her face close to his, her claws just inches from his throat. "Then prove it," she whispered. "Prove that you are not just a fool speaking pretty words." The human met her gaze without flinching. "How?" She rose again, her voice sharp as a blade. "There is a trial, a hunt. If you survive it, perhaps you are more than prey. If you die, then your words mean nothing." The hunters hissed and laughed, eager for the challenge. Many had died in the trial before. Beasts, soldiers, even rival warriors. None had lived, but the human only nodded. "Then I will face your trial." The tribe laughed louder, but it was not the mocking laughter of predators. It was uneasy, nervous. The calmness in his voice, the certainty in his tone. It unsettled even the fiercest among them. That night the cage was opened. 2 hunters cut his bindings and dragged him to the edge of the valley where the firelight faded. The ground there was cracked, the air heavy with the smell of death. Strange shapes moved in the shadows, creatures that even the ravenous tribe avoided. The leader stood at the front, her golden eyes sharp. "Run," she commanded. "Survive until dawn. If you return, you live. If not, your bones will join the others." The hunters laughed cruelly, certain they would never see him again. But when the human stepped into the darkness, he did not run wildly like other prey. He moved with purpose. He stopped near a twisted tree, broke a branch, and tested its weight. His hands worked quickly, stripping the bark, shaping the wood. The hunters frowned. They expected panic, not patience. The human was building a weapon. He gathered stones, sharpened the branch into a spear, and wrapped it with vines. His movements were steady, efficient, as though he had done this 100 times before. The leader narrowed her eyes. This was no ordinary man. As the hours passed, the sounds of the valley grew darker, roars of beasts, shrieks of predators. The tribe climbed to the cliffs to watch from above. They expected to see him torn apart. Instead, they saw him fight with fire and cunning. He set traps with vines, used stones to drive beasts into each other, and struck with his spear when the moment was right. By midnight, the whispers had changed. He is not dying. He is outsmarting them. He is surviving. The leader watched silently, her claws tapping against the stone. She had seen bravery before, but this was something else. This was skill, born not from muscle but from mind. The human's secret was clear now. He was not fearless because he was reckless. He was fearless because he knew how to endure. When dawn finally broke, the human returned to the camp, bloodied but alive, carrying the broken spear in his hand. The hunters fell silent as he stepped into the firelight once more. He dropped the spear at the leader's feet and spoke calmly. "You asked for proof. Here it is." The camp was silent. Not a laugh, not a hiss, only the crackle of the fire. And in that silence, something changed forever. For the first time in their long reign, the ravenous tribe looked at a man. Not as prey, but as something far more dangerous. The valley was quiet when dawn touched the peaks of the red mountains. Smoke from the campfire curled into the pale sky, carrying with it the scent of ash and blood. The human stood in the circle of the tribe. His body scratched, his clothes torn, but his eyes, steady as ever, showed no defeat. Before him, the broken spear he had crafted lay on the ground. He had returned alive from the deadly hunt, something no man had ever done before. And yet the trial was not over. The leader of the ravenous tribe stepped forward. Her golden eyes burned like fire in the morning light. "You survived the night," she said, her voice low and commanding. "But survival is not enough. You will face the second trial, the test of strength." The hunters roared in approval, their voices echoing through the valley. They wanted to see his body broken, his defiance crushed. They wanted to see blood. The human did not flinch. He only asked, "Well, what is this test?" The leader raised her clawed hand and pointed toward the far side of the camp. The ground there split into a deep pit surrounded by jagged stone. Inside, chained to the rocks, was a beast. It was enormous, twice the size of a man, its body covered in thick scaled armor. Its jaws dripped with venom and its roar shook the earth. Even the hunters, fierce as they were, watched it with wary eyes. "This creature," the leader said, "has devoured warriors, soldiers, and even some of our own. If you defeat it, you live. If it defeats you, we feast." The tribe shouted again, some laughing cruelly, others watching with hungry curiosity. The human stepped closer to the pit, studying the beast. His face remained calm, but his eyes narrowed as if he were already calculating every movement. He picked up the broken spear he had dropped earlier. It was short, cracked, and weak, but it was all he had. The hunters opened the pit gate. With a deep rumbling growl, the beast lunged forward, its chains rattling. The ground shook as it tried to reach the human, its claws raking against the stone. The human did not run. He waited. The chains snapped free. The beast roared and charged. The tribe screamed in excitement, claws raised, voices echoing. This was the moment they had waited for. The fearless human crushed. His calmness shattered, but the human moved differently. He stepped to the side. His body quick and precise, the beast's strike missing by inches. Dust exploded where the claws hit the ground. He rolled across the dirt, spear in hand, and struck at the beast's leg, not to kill but to test. The wood splintered against the thick scales. The hunters laughed, thinking the weapon useless. But the human's eyes narrowed again. He had learned something. The beast roared and swung its massive tail. The strike would have broken bones, but the human dropped flat to the ground. The tail whooshed over him, smashing a boulder into shards. He rose quickly, grabbing one of the shards of stone in his free hand. Again he studied. Again he waited. The leader watched closely, her golden eyes sharp. She expected panic, flailing, desperate attacks, but what she saw was patience, calculation. The beast lunged again, its jaws wide. At the last second, the human shoved the splintered spear into its mouth and jammed the stone shard sideways. The creature thrashed, roaring, trying to crush the trap. The hunters gasped. The spear snapped, but the stone held just long enough for the human to leap to the side and strike again. This time, at the softer flesh beneath the creature's jaw, his stone shard cut deep, blood spraying across the ground. The beast shrieked, its massive body thrashing wildly. Dust filled the air. The tribe shouted, some in shock, some in excitement. The human climbed onto its back, gripping the ridges of its scales. With brutal precision, he jammed the shard again and again into the weak spots between the armor, under the throat, at the base of the skull. The creature roared, stumbled, and finally collapsed with a thunderous crash that shook the valley. Silence followed. The human stood on the beast's body, blood dripping from his arms, chest heaving with exhaustion. He raised the stone shard once, then dropped it to the ground. "I am done." The tribe erupted, not in laughter, not in mockery, but in awe. The hunters shouted, their voices filled with disbelief. Some stared with wide eyes, others hissed in confusion. They had seen many die in that pit, but never had they seen one man unarmed bring down the beast. The leader stepped forward slowly. Her golden eyes locked on him, but this time they carried something different. Not cruelty, not hunger, respect. She raised her clawed hand, silencing the tribe. "This human," she said, her voice carrying across the camp, "is no prey. He has faced the valley. He has faced the beast. He stands alive where others have fallen," the hunters murmured. Some nodded, some scowled, but none dared to laugh. The leader's voice dropped lower, almost to a whisper. "You are dangerous," she said. "Not because of your strength, but because of your will." The human looked back at her, his steady eyes unshaken. "I told you before," he said softly. "Fear does not rule me." The silence that followed was heavier than any roar, heavier than any scream. And in that silence, the ravenous tribe felt something strange once again. Not curiosity this time. Not doubt, but respect. The beast's body still lay in the pit, its blood soaking the cracked earth. The air smelled of iron and smoke, and yet the camp of the ravenous tribe was quiet. The hunters stood in a wide circle, golden eyes fixed on the human who had just done the impossible. He had no armor, no true weapon, no claws or fangs. Yet he had killed a monster that had devoured warriors stronger than most of them. And now, standing atop the corpse, he looked not like prey, but like something else entirely. The leader stepped forward, her tall figure glowing in the firelight. Her eyes, usually cold and merciless, burned now with a new fire. She studied the human as though seeing him for the first time. "You should be dead," she said quietly. "No one survives the beast." The human wiped blood from his face, his voice calm and steady. Perhaps no one tried the right way. The tribe stirred uneasily at his words. He had not only lived, he spoke as though their fearsome trial had been nothing more than a puzzle to solve. The younger hunters hissed angrily, but their voices lacked conviction. For the first time in their history, they were unsure. The leader raised her clawed hand to silence them. Her gaze never left the human. "You are dangerous," she said. "Not because of your body, not because of your strength, but because of something else." The human tilted his head slightly. "Because I refuse to bow." Her lips curved not into cruelty, but into something stranger. Amusement. "Yes, that." The tribe watched silently as the human was led back into the camp. But this time the hunters no longer dragged him. They walked beside him, their steps slower, their eyes no longer mocking. Their whispers were no longer about how quickly he would die, but about how he had lived. In the center of the camp, near the great fire, the leader addressed her tribe. "For years we have ruled through fear. Every man who has crossed our valley trembled, screamed, begged. Fear has always made us strong. But this one," she pointed at the human, "he does not fear us. He breaks it." The hunters growled, confused. Some shouted that he was still prey, that he should be killed before his defiance spread. But others shook their heads. They had seen him stand unbroken. They had seen him slay the beast. Deep inside, a seed of respect had already taken root. The leader silenced them all with a sharp hiss. She turned back to the human. "Tell me, human," she demanded, "what gives you this power? What makes you stand without fear when all others collapse?" The firelight danced across his face as he answered. "Fear is only as strong as you let it be. Once you decide it will not control you, it loses its teeth." His words struck the tribe harder than any weapon. For so long they had lived by making others fear them. But what if fear could be broken? What if it was nothing but a chain that could be cast aside? The younger hunters muttered among themselves. A few even looked uneasy, as if questioning for the first time what gave their tribe its power. The leader's golden eyes narrowed. She circled the human slowly, her gaze sharp. "You would teach us weakness?" she asked. The human shook his head. "No, I would teach you strength. Real strength. The kind that does not depend on fear." The tribe fell silent. The fire crackled loudly, filling the air with sparks. His voice carried a weight none of them could ignore. One of the younger hunters stepped forward suddenly. She bared her claws and hissed at him. "Enough, he lies. He is still prey. He bleeds like prey. Let me prove it." She lunged forward, but before her claws touched him, the human caught her wrist. His grip was not of brute force, but of precision, strength born from survival. For a moment she froze, stunned that he had stopped her so easily. He released her and stepped back. His voice was calm but sharp. "You see? You depend on fear. But if fear does not work, you have nothing. That is weakness. The tribe erupted again, but this time their voices were not filled with anger alone. They were filled with confusion. Some growled in denial, but others looked thoughtful, uncertain. The leader raised her hand once more, her expression unreadable. She looked at the human long and hard, then finally spoke. You speak of strength without fear. You show us defiance where others show weakness. Perhaps, she paused, her voice heavy. Perhaps there is truth in your words. Gasps spread through the tribe. Never before had their leader spoken so openly of doubt. Never before had she admitted that their way might not be absolute. The human stood silently, his calm presence heavier than any roar. For the first time in their long history, the ravenous tribe felt their foundation tremble. They had lived by fear, but now standing before them was a man who refused to bow, and in that refusal, he was breaking the very heart of their power. The campfire burned low, its strange green-blue flames whispering into the night. The ravenous tribe sat in silence. They had roared in victory many times before. They had laughed at prisoners, torn warriors apart, and feasted on fear. But tonight was different. Tonight they stared at the human who had refused to bow. He had survived their valley. He had killed their beast. He had spoken words that struck deeper than any blade. And now, the tribe, the fiercest female warriors in the galaxy, found themselves caught between the old way and something new. The leader rose slowly. Her tall frame shimmered in the torchlight, her golden eyes glowing as they locked onto him. For a long moment she said nothing. The entire tribe held its breath. At last she spoke. For generations, fear has been our law. We were strong because others were weak. We ruled because others trembled. But this one, she pointed at the human, he has broken that chain. The hunters stirred uneasily. Some hissed in denial. Others lowered their eyes, unwilling to meet her gaze. A few, the youngest among them, leaned forward with curiosity burning in their golden eyes. The leader continued, her voice sharp but steady. He has shown us another strength, one that does not need fear, a strength born of will, of defiance, of refusing to kneel, and I cannot ignore it. Gasps rippled through the camp. Never before had their leader spoken such words. Never before had she acknowledged anyone outside the tribe as more than prey. The human stood calmly, his hands loose at his sides, his voice steady as ever. I did not come here to destroy you. I did not come here to bow. I came here because I wanted to see if fear truly ruled you. Now I know it does not have to. The word struck them again. Some hunters clenched their fists, unsure whether to snarl or to listen. Others looked at one another, shaken. The younger warrior who had attacked him earlier stepped forward again. But this time her claws stayed low. Her voice was uncertain, not mocking. If fear is not strength, then what are we? The human's eyes softened. He looked at her, then at the tribe around him. You are warriors, hunters, leaders. You are powerful even without fear. But fear has chained you as much as it chained your prey. You do not see it yet, but you can. The fire popped loudly, sending sparks into the sky. The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time in memory, the ravenous tribe was not united in their hunger, not united in their cruelty. They were divided, half clinging to the old ways, half drawn toward the human's strange, unsettling truth. The leader's gaze flickered, unreadable. Then slowly she dropped her claws. Perhaps you are right, she admitted. Perhaps fear has blinded us. Shouts broke out immediately, some hunters furious, others stunned. But none dared challenge her openly. She raised her voice again. Let it be known from this night that not all strength comes from fear. Let it be known that one human, small in body but unbroken in spirit, stood against us and lived. The tribe fell into stunned silence. The human simply nodded, his calm expression unchanged. You call me prey, he said softly. But tonight, you have seen the truth. Humanity is not prey. Humanity endures, and endurance is stronger than fear. For a moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, one of the younger hunters struck her chest with a fist, a salute of respect. Another followed. Then another. Soon half the camp echoed the sound, the sharp thump of fists on armor. The old hunters snarled, but even they could not hide the flicker of doubt in their eyes. The seed had been planted. The leader's gaze never left the human. At last she spoke the words that would echo through the valley for generations. You are not prey. You are legend. The hunters roared, but this roar was different. It was not hunger. It was not mockery. It was something heavier. Respect. That night, stories began to form around the fire. Stories of the man who walked into the forbidden valley unafraid. Stories of the one who broke the beast. Stories of the human who shattered fear itself. And long after he left the valley, the legend grew. Travelers whispered not of the ravenous tribe that devoured men, but of the night a human changed them forever. Some said the tribe grew softer. Others said they grew wiser. But all agreed. The day fear was broken, the valley itself changed, and at the heart of it was one man, a human who refused to kneel.